What's up everyone, it's Kris with Tabletops and Tentacles, here with the interesting projects funding now on Kickstarter. For the most part, these are projects that are ending in the next 2 weeks, so if they're interesting to you, get on it and pledge. This is going to be a mix of games, RPGs, and RPG accessories. First up is Facility 7, Exploration, Espionage, Battle Royale Twist. So this game looks interesting to me. I've got to admit that the art of the cover looks a little better than the art on the inside, in my opinion, but it does still look really fun. There's some pretty obvious pop culture call-outs here, but it kind of looks like Burgle Bros with a secret agent like twist, traitor twist to it, and it looks pretty cool. It's done by Never Engine Games. I believe this is their first game that they've done, and it looks like a little bit of a passion project. I think it looks neat. It's pretty cool looking, and it is $39 for the game. I like this type of game. I'm a big fan of heists and spy stuff and everything, so I'll probably end up giving this a try. I also do like that they have a Spotify playlist that kind of sets the mood for the game. I think that's pretty cool. Next up, Streets by Dave Clark. This is a game from Sinister Fish Games, who also did Villagers. I think that Villagers appeals to me aesthetically more so than Streets, but this looks really cool. You're building a street. It's a kind of a tile card laying game for 1 to 5 players, and you are sort of building a city out of these cool like lofts and houses and attractions and like seaside bungalows and things, and then you can sell buildings in it once things are enclosed. You can move meeples in, and whoever makes the most money wins. Looks great. These guys make really tight, fun games. The art's wonderful. The graphic design's even better, and it comes with a solo mode, which is pretty great. Next up, Finding Sasquatch. I have to admit, this is a little bit of just kind of a generic set collection game, this card game, but it's Sasquatch. I'm a sucker for Sasquatch. The art in this is fantastic. I love the artwork in this game. I think it's super fun. It's got a great take on all the different characters. These guys are based in the Pacific Northwest, and you can tell because it's got that very like Oregon, Seattle aesthetic to it. Their page is very simple. The game is $16, and I think it looks really fun. It's just a simple card game. It's for 2 to 5 players. It takes about 30 minutes to play. Next up, Monsters on Board. This is probably my favorite game in this batch of games this time around. It's doing great. It's got 114,000. It's from Final Frontier Games. Look at the art in this. It's beautiful. It's got like this rockabilly Addams Family aesthetic to it, but the art is a little sketchy. It's pretty cool looking. This is for 1 to 4 players in 30 to 60 minutes. It's got all sorts of custom dice, a really cool graveyard board. I just absolutely love the art in this. The fear mobiles are where you set your dice after you roll them, and it's just really cool looking. I love the aesthetic of this. I'm obviously a huge creature and monster fan anyway. The deluxe edition does have miniatures, which are genuinely gorgeous. I think the miniature design is amazing. It's hard to not want the deluxe edition. However, it does jump it from $54 to $69, which man, $70 for this style of game is a really hard ask for me, but it looks so fun and cool. So that's my pick this week for favorite board game. Now we're going to move into sort of role-playing aspect of things. First off is Atma, a role-playing card game. So this is technically a board game, but it's sort of a role-playing game in a box where you pull cards out and create a role-playing adventure. You play with 1 to 4 players in about 2 hours, and it looks really cool. It's got all sorts of different characters you can play. It has storytelling storytelling aspects to it. You earn different tokens that alter how things happen, and then you kind of narrate the game as you play. So it's sort of a storytelling, role-playing, guided RPG. But I think it looks really cool. It's $40 for the game itself, and it's got a lot of card to it. I'm not a humongous fan of the art with this, but it is really cool. This is from Miramorph Games, who did the Shipwreck Arcana, which I haven't played yet, but I absolutely love the graphic design on. This is a little more cartoony than their other stuff, and I don't like the graphic design quite as much, but I am a big fan of kind of that self-narrated storytelling RPG thing, so I'll probably end up picking this up if I can justify it. It looks super cool. Next up is the Arium RPG. Arium? I have no idea how to pronounce that. But this is an interesting thing. So it is kind of a system of two different books, and one of them is Create, which is for creating your own system and world to kind of take place on. It's sort of a collaborative role-playing game building system. And then Discover works with almost any world you want to and kind of homebrews it. I like the idea of this kind of thing. I don't know if this in particular is for me, but players that appreciate this type of role-playing game are really going to dig this. It's really reasonably priced. The digital copy is only $8 for the two books. Next up, Legends of Avalon, a Celtic Roman tabletop role-playing game. This looks really cool. You start humble beginnings and work your way up to being legends. It's very indie themed. The artwork's great. It reminds me a little bit of some of the more modern tabletop games that I have been seeing coming out. Kind of that sketchy old school fantasy art. These guys have been promoting this pretty heavily, and I think it looks really nice. The graphic design's great. They have a number of artists working on it, and they all look really nice. Varied, but still kind of thematically cohesive. And I just think it looks really awesome. You can get a copy of the illustrated playing cards for $16, or you can dive into the actual rulebook for about $26. That looks like Daryl Dixon as a fantasy ranger with a fox on his head. Next up, Into the Fae, which is a 5th edition compatible module. And this is from the DM Lair, who is the DM Lair YouTube channel, which I subscribe to and enjoy. And they're doing great. They're over 55 grand right now. And this is a series of adventures that takes you from level 1 up through level 5, which is kind of like, it's kind of my favorite type of supplement for 5e. It's kind of weird because as a kid, all I ever wanted to do was get a character and play him until he was old and decrepit and died horribly in a valley somewhere. And these days, I actually do really like the idea of just, playing a character from level 1 to level 5, then starting a new character in a new system in a new world. And maybe that has to do with, how rarely I actually get to sit and play RPGs these days, or maybe me getting older and there being so many cool indie RPGs out there. But this looks really awesome, and it's right up my alley as far as the type of gameplay I like to play these days. It's $25 for the PDF, $40 to get the full hardcover book of it. And I think it looks really nice. The artwork's great. He's got a really solid handle on what it's like to play D&D and what makes things interesting. And I think that Into the Fae itself looks really neat. Next up is my pick for RPG content this time around, and that is The Wretched Second Printing. So this is a solo RPG that's sort of a journaling type RPG, and I haven't gotten too heavily into the journaling RPGs, but I've become very intrigued by them. I think it's really interesting. I think it's a neat way to kind of stretch your brain and the way you think about storytelling and role-playing games and that aspect of it. And it's like $8 for the PDF and soundtrack, and it's a cool sci-fi thing. I Don't know how you can go wrong, frankly. I'm a big fan of sci-fi horror. As always, thank you for watching. If any of these games strike your fancy, you will be able to find links to them in the description below. You can also find links to anything we are working on, whether it's YouTube, our channels, our Kickstarters, or our magazine Tabletops and Tentacles at tabletopsandtentacles.com. Until next time, I'm Kris McClanahan. May you live in interesting times.